a story. Some of you may have heard me tell this story before, but my own personal experience growing up as a kid. I grew up in a small farming village in southern Ontario, about 2 hours west of Toronto on the shores of Lake Huron, across from Michigan and Detroit. And we were, quite frankly, poor people. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was in the 60s. And the most amazing thing that ever happened was when a color TV showed up in our house one Christmas, which was pretty remarkable. That said, I think a lot of the TV was still only being broadcast in black and white, so a color TV was a bit useless, but here we are. But I was a voracious reader as a kid. I had a great imagination, and I got distracted easily by lots of things. But one of my favorite things was reading. I read all sorts of, I don't know if anybody is old enough to remember a magazine called The Boy's Life, which was full of great adventures. And the other one was, of course, was The Hardy Boys. And the Hardy Boys were two brothers that were forever getting into great mysteries and great adventures. And they were junior detectives, and they would solve all of these amazing crimes. And as soon as I had one, I read it in a matter of minutes in our itty-bitty little library in our itty-bitty little town. Often stocked them, but they were rare and they didn't get rotated through very often. So once you read one Hardy Boy book, you read it. There's not a lot of adventure in rereading it. And one day I was downtown in our pharmacy, our little drugstore that was in our little village at the time, and Mr. Turkheimer was the pharmacist, and he was busy, and I was at the back by the books and the magazines. And sure enough, there was this Hardy Boy book, and I was quite enamored by it and envious that I couldn't have it, and all of the things as a 7 or 8 year old boy that you shouldn't be. And there I was, and sure enough, and I knew I didn't have any money. And so before I knew it, it was up under my shirt, and I was out the front door and gone home. Well, a new book in our house, it doesn't show up unannounced very easily. And of course, I was caught with this new book. And my dad turned me around and walked me right back downtown from the house to the drugstore. And he said, "You get your backside in that store, and you put it back, give it back to Mr. Turkheim, and you apologize and just hope he doesn't send you off to jail," which was horrifying to anybody, but horrifying to a 7 or 8 year old. And so I did go in the store, but I didn't go to see Mr. Turkheim. I went back to the back where the magazines and the books were, and I slipped it out from under my shirt and tucked it back into the bookshelf where it came from in the first place. And I quietly shuffled out of the store, hoping the world was none the wiser. And I bumped into my dad was waiting for me, and he asked me if I saw Mr. Turkheimer, and I said no, I didn't. And then we turned around and went right back in. And I was forced, I guess, to confess to Mr. Turkheim what I have done, the sin that I had carried out, and that I put the book back, and I was sorry. And he was very gracious, and he asked me not to come back in the store for a while, I think. And he actually thanked me for being an adult and being a responsible person to own up to what I had done wrong. The story here and how it's connected to Mr. Frankel's quote about the pause between stimulus and reaction is quite frankly, is that my dad took a pause several times that day. I guess I could have got a whipping. That wasn't completely uncommon in our house to get spanking or the belt. And I probably did deserve it. I don't know if where that lands with people today, but in the day that was quite appropriate to get the belt if you did something wrong. And I didn't get the belt. I was walked downtown and I wasn't yelled at. I don't remember. Maybe I was at the beginning, but by the time we got downtown, I was given some instructions, and I went in and I didn't fulfill what I was asked to do. And I came back outside, and again, my dad took a pause. And instead of yelling or doing something else in front of the store, we walked back in the store, And Mr. Turkheim took a pause, and he could have done a lot of things that day, I suppose. I guess I was 7 or 8. How much trouble was I going to get in the big scheme of things? But he could have made a big stink about it, or ranted and raved like a lunatic, or banned me forever. But he took a pause, and he took a moment, and gave me some grace and appreciation. And then we went outside and we went back home. And I think my dad took another pause somewhere along that way. And I never heard about that story again. It was never brought up ever again in our household. It was something that I did. It was something that was corrected. It was something I was punished for, in a manner of speaking, because I had to go turn myself in. But that pause between stimulus and reaction was a great lesson in life. From that moment on, for me at any rate, I took the time there to think about that and reflect on that. And often, many times in my life as a leader and as a father and as a grandfather now, and as a human being, I really wish that I would have taken the grace allowed me in the pause between stimuli and response, and allowed me to buy that time, to allow me to think about the person that I was dealing with in a different way, and how I was going to manage that.